Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Hoy, and welcome to the next installment of GQG's 7-Minute Alpha series. This episode is titled, It Takes Two to Taco, but sadly, it's not a presentation on how tacos are best shared with a friend. Instead, we'll be discussing the current state of the commodity markets, focusing on the significant disruptions caused by the ongoing war in the Middle East that we believe are supportive of higher for longer commodity prices. But before we begin, we have to start by reminding everyone that the war in Iran is evolving by the day. Therefore, our comments today are based on our current thinking as of April 2nd, 2026, but they are subject to change. However, as we'll soon share, we do not believe that the war's impact on the commodity markets is likely to be changed or improved anytime soon. And I'm joined today by GQG's global investment strategist, Josh Snyder, who will be walking us through this topic. How's it going, Josh?
Hey Alex, good to see you. Yeah, I wish we were sharing tacos physically, but we're not. But we're here to talk about that, and we'll keep it to the lot to unpack. But we'll keep it 7 minute alpha, and we'll save the 70 minute alpha for the follow up.
Yeah, great. Well, let's just go ahead and dive right in then on why it takes two to taco. And by now, I think we've all heard the phrase taco, Trump always chickens out, as it relates to the Trump administration frequently pulling back from the decisions that it has made. So, Josh, now with respect to the war in Iran, why don't we think that tacos are on the menu this time?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of different, food acronyms we can come up with. I mean, more recently, I saw one that's nacho, right? So not actually changing the Hormuz opening. Of course, that's a big part of it too. So we could spend the whole time sharing, discussions around food. But I think the reality is, as we sit here in early 2026, and kind of compare and contrast what we've seen really over the last year or so is I think oftentimes a lot of market participants are always running the last playbook, right? They think that if you go back to 2025, yeah, it made a lot of sense and actually worked for almost the entirety of the year. Buy every dip, every time something was super provocative that came out, Trump pulls out his big goofy board with all these random numbers and says we're going to hit everybody with these, super high tariffs, and of course the market sells off. And then once Dow points get to a particular part, because that's what they're focused on apparently, or the 10-year, right, gets to a certain level, and it looks like calisthenics almost every time it gets towards, 5%, he chickens out. But the biggest difference between back then, a year ago and today is the fact that once a conflict breaks out, you need two to taco, right? You can always unilaterally threaten to put higher tariffs on your avocados or watches or whatever the case is. But once the actual conflict evolves, right? Once bombs are dropped and things actually start to happen, you can't just pull that back. You can't put those, back in the container, right? There are other parties involved that have a say so, in terms of what's happening. And of course, then therefore, a consequence of what we're seeing is what's happening when in the Strait of Hormuz. And it's a very, very important choke point in the world, as everybody knows, right? With just a single stroke, basically taking off, 20% seaborne crude. I mean, this is a big deal. It has a lot of ramifications. So it's not just as simple as, unilaterally pulling back a threat on avocados. And the reality is we live in the universe, right? In the universe, that's where energy exists, right? I think a lot of folks do think we still operate in the metaverse, right? Where you can just take your headset off and, turn it off and restart from the prior save point, right? With no ramifications. That's not how this works. And this is very different. This is a lot more like 2022 than it is 2025.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, tariffs and last year's tacos were disruptions, but war involves multiple parties and is destruction, like you noted.
Agreed.
So applying that then to the commodity markets, this destruction is causing one of the largest supply shocks in history because things aren't just paused, they're also destroyed. And the world can't afford destruction in this region because it's pivotal to the transport and production of oil and gas, in addition to other commodities, like you noted. And as we can see, prior to the war, roughly 20% of the world's petroleum and related liquids, or nearly 21 million barrels per day, pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, however, this daily volume is now effectively zero. So this transportation is gone because currently an average of only two oil and gas tankers have been navigating the Strait of Hormuz each day since the start of the war, which is down from an average of 50 previously. So, Josh, even with these claims and then speeches, of course, that the U.S. involvement will end in a few weeks, and let's even
Yep.
say that the war ends. Will the
We would hope
commodity
it
supply
does.
shock be alleviated and prices go back to normal?
Yeah, I mean, no, not certainly in the exact same way, of course, prior to the war, because again, like as we discussed, I mean, these things take time to pull back on. If you look at what's happened in LNG, for example, from Qatar's come out and said, basically 17% of their, LNG capacity has been taking offline. I think they said something to the effect of, 20 plus billion in revenue lost. But maybe even more importantly is the fact that they said it's going to take probably 3 to 5 years to pull all of that back online. I mean, that's a huge deal. And you would think that, and that's their estimates, right? It's not mine, it's not yours, it's not GQG's. That's the Qataris' estimates of when these things can come back online. And again, you would think that they would give you a normal timeline. In fact, actually, you would think they'd give you an accelerated one. So if they're saying 3 to 5 years, it's probably not 3 to 5 days, and it's probably not, 3 to 5 months. So this is really going to take time to work through the system. And even as you think about logistics and timing, and even even though the U.S. certainly does export LNG, there's a huge difference in terms of how long it takes to get a tanker from the U.S. to say anywhere in Asia versus the Middle East, right? You're talking basically double the time. So that naturally adds, you got to find more ships, you add more cost. So all of these things are really additive. And then just lastly to that point is they all have a lot of knock-on effects as well, right? And you're getting into growing season. These things have impacts in terms of fertilizer. I mean, so much of helium also comes out of the Middle East. I mean, 80% is basically between the US and Qatar functionally. And again, a lot of those go to Asia for some aerospace, but mostly, semiconductors. So not only does everything not get reset because it does take time, because the real world requires time to pull things back on, whether they're offline, shut in, whatever. But also they have a lot of knock-on effects as well in terms of food and other industrial processes. So in our opinion, I hope this all goes away tonight. We hope that all, sort of rolls away soon and the timelines are hopefully sooner, but stuck to. But even when that happens, there are still a lot of these lagged effects that continue to have to work their way through the system.
Yeah, absolutely. And completely agree, of course. But to wrap things up for now in our short series here, it's just worth reiterating how much uncertainty exists surrounding the war in Iran and its impact on commodity and other markets today. And our beliefs are always subject to change, but historically, these uncertain environments are a great reminder of what our approach at GQG seeks to bring to your client portfolios, and that's adaptability. Now, without getting into the specifics, we would encourage you to examine our portfolios because we're very pleased with the downside risk management that we've been able to exhibit year to date. And downside risk management has always been a hallmark of our process. And while we feel the need for it in client portfolios is not going away anytime soon, we have to end on this note. While the best taco bowls may be served at the Trump Tower Grill, which is according to a real tweet from Trump himself, in our opinion, it takes two to taco in Iran. So thank you for the time today, and please don't hesitate to reach out to your GQG contact if you have any questions.